and so we might make a start, not to penalise those of you who are here on time. So welcome everybody to session 3.2 on improving energy efficiency in buildings. My name's Mark Lister, and I'm the co-CEO of Asia Clean Energy Partners, and also the CEO of the Corporate Decarbonisation Exchange. I won't tell you too much about those things or about myself, because you can see everything you need to know in my bio on the app, on your phone. So are all of you using the app? Let's see. Do you like it? Yeah, it's actually really useful, and we're going to use it a bit in this session as well, because I want to engage you. I want to make sure that we're addressing the questions that you have in the audience about this topic. And you know, I think it's one way to do that is to use the Q&A function in the app. So if you're in the session for 3.2, you can actually ask your questions there. I'm going to be keeping a track of that. I'm going to be taking a look at the most interesting questions. You can also upvote each other's questions so we can see what's the thing that you're most interested to learn more about. And I want you to start thinking about that right now in attending this session. What is it that you came to learn about? Hopefully some of you are energy efficiency practitioners. I definitely know some of you are. Hopefully some of you are buildings practitioners, because we're talking about the intersection of those things, energy efficiency in buildings. And I want to thank ADB for both selecting me as the co-chair of the energy efficiency track this year, and also for putting energy efficiency in the spotlight. Because as those of us long-suffering people working on energy efficiency for a long time know, we actually are a big part of the solution. Energy efficiency, not just generation, but the demand side picture here, is a huge part of the solution. Energy efficiency and buildings are everywhere. The opportunities are everywhere. The technologies are mostly proven and well known, and they're quickly deployable. So we have a huge opportunity here to move at speed and at scale through energy efficiency, but it doesn't always happen. There's a lot of barriers and issues across policy, across technology understandings, across awareness, and across financing these issues. So they're all the themes that we're going to tease out today, and we've got 5 great speakers to help us to do that. So I'm going to allow them to give you their presentations, and we'll, again, encourage you to take a look at what they're saying. Ask questions in the app. We can make sure that we're addressing your questions. Then I'm going to bring everyone back for a panel, and again, we want to engage you and make this as interactive as we can. We're also very aware that we're the last session of the day, and your energy might be going like that. Maybe you're thinking about cocktails, maybe you're thinking about something else, but this is important, so we want to keep your attention. So I will be engaging you throughout the session. So without any further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker, which is Lavan Tiru. He's a seasoned expert in this area. I won't read out his bio because, again, it's all there for you to see. But Lavan is the Executive Director of Infrastructure Asia, and he's going to share with us about some of their activities. So please, Lavan, welcome to the stage. Let's give him a round of applause.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Lavan. I'm the Executive Director at Infrastructure Asia. And today I just want to share some things that we have been working on as an office, and also, refer to some of the points that Mark mentioned in his short introduction. So Infrastructure Asia, we are a project facilitation office set up by the Singapore government. We're working in the region to move forward infrastructure projects, right? And we view energy efficiency as infrastructure. And I'll explain why as we go through the presentation. Hopefully this will work. Yes. Okay, so first thing, I know it's a crowded slide, but the header does it, right? So we all know there are economic and environmental imperatives for building retrofits. There are many studies out there, but we think, the size is about 400 billion investment opportunity. But what is a little bit more scary is what are we doing today in terms of investments, and it's only about 1% that we need to invest in existing buildings that need to be refurbished. And if you think about what the target is, 3 to 5%, then we know we are quite far off, right? So the existing stock of buildings to be refurbished is actually quite significant with good opportunity. Next, as Mark alluded to, right, it seems to make sense already, right, that energy efficiency is an important thing to happen. And if you just look at the indicative prices of electricity, this is by no means meant to be comprehensive. You would notice that Singapore and Philippines are pretty high. So it should make complete sense for these two markets to be actually doing. And, over time, we will expect maybe the rest of Southeast Asia as they try to unwind some of the subsidies, those prices will go up and the conversation will make more sense. Now, Singapore has this thing called the Green Plan, and actually energy efficiency is front and center in that Green Plan, right? So it's not just about generation, but it's also about what do we do, and we call it the 80-80-80 kind of a rule of thumb, right? So 80% of our buildings are meant to be green, 80% of new developments are meant to be super low energy from 2030, and we're targeting 80% improvements in energy efficiency from 2005 levels. So if you look at it, this is actually a broad guideline that is set up by the government. This is aspirational, this is where we want to do. But if any of you know anything about Singapore, when the government says it's going to do something, they try to deliver on it. And we started this exercise a long time ago, maybe about 20, 25 years ago. So over time, we've built up quite a good ecosystem of players across the entire spectrum, from consulting to even financing. And so these players have been working on projects in Singapore. Now they're getting excited about coming up into the region and working on energy efficiency projects. And we'll show you one or two examples as we move along. So here's an example in Singapore. This is Keppel Bay Tower. As you can see, they implemented energy efficiency. They're saving about $400,000 a year. And here's where you see a carrot and a stick incentive system being used, right? So the Singapore government was able to give certain grants to buildings that were going to put deep retrofits. So you can get a grant from the government. They pay for some of it. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's really I think for Keppel, it's like putting itself out there and saying, look, this is Green Mark Platinum, zero energy building. And so, it allows them to target a different profile of clients who can be tenants in their buildings. But as you can see, energy efficiency is not just about one person. Of course, there could be one person or one party that can have all the solutions. But if you see in the middle, look at all the partners that came together to deliver a project like this. So not just in Singapore, we also see some of our companies going out closer to where we are in the Philippines. We have companies that are coming up who are doing actually very targeted energy efficiency. So this is more about optimization. But interesting thing is changing the lens, right? So zero disruption to your 24-hour operations, zero equipment replacement, right? So it's just using sensors, it's using smart technology, and we're able to deliver quite interesting savings for people to consider. So if, following from what Mark said later, if this is so great, why is it not happening today, right? So, but we always say that gives Infrastructure Asia some work to do in the region. And I think we are all very familiar with some of the reasons why energy efficiency doesn't take off to the level that we want to see it, right? Firstly, generally there's a lack of awareness. No matter how many years we've carried on this journey, there's a general lack of awareness, not just from the perspective of owners, but also from the perspective of financiers, right? There's a lack of scale. So, typically banks don't get out of bed if a project is not, say, 10, 20, $30 million. So, why should we look at putting in place small energy improvement projects, right? Third, tariffs, right? Tariff and subsidies. Okay, so not just about tariffs, but subsidies as well. They kind of skew the computations. And finally, a lack of enforcement. But what is Infrastructure Asia doing about this? I just want to focus the remainder of my presentation on this. First, I think working with our partners in the region, we try to create workshops that focus people on the topic of energy efficiency, right? So we do decarbonization workshops. We've actually collaborated with the ADB on an innovative green finance clinic in Singapore, where energy efficiency was actually one of the topics that were discussed. So we create demand on, we try to create demand. Second, on the supply side, we work with all the solution providers to come together to create a consortium of sorts, right? So that together, all these parties, consultants, the software, but more importantly, catalyze through finance, come together to form a consortium to then deliver their services. But it's left to each landlord or each asset owner to decide who you want to work with. It's just that consortium is out there. And so this is something that InfraAsia created about 2 years ago. We call it the Energy Efficiency Aggregation Platform, but that's how we started. You can look at it more broadly now as a decarbonization platform. And the whole idea is to aggregate demand, both on the demand and the supply side. And the key outcome is really to reduce some of the counterparty risks, streamline the due diligence process. And we continue to work with everyone that's out there, ESCOs, governments, try to bring everybody to the table to have a discussion on energy efficiency. And really, what we hope to do is to unlock the potential scale of energy efficiency investments across the region. Thank you. Right on dot.
For the sake of the audience, I want you to know that Lavan finished with 4 seconds remaining, which is probably one of the best pieces of timekeeping I've ever seen. Thanks a lot, Lavan. And I also got the message that I should get off the stage because I'm blocking the presentation. So I will do that now. But before I do that, I will introduce our next speaker. I'm also a little bit unhappy with my audience today as the moderator because so far I see no questions in the app. So that means you either didn't think Lavan's presentation was interesting enough. I myself have about 4 or 5 questions that I want to ask him after what he said. A lot of interesting ideas there. I'm only going to mention one, which is that Infrastructure Asia says that energy efficiency is infrastructure. I assume by that this is not a common viewpoint, right? So how do we change that viewpoint? How do we change that narrative so that people do understand that this upgrade is a valid asset class, right? So that's, I don't know if that is a question, but you don't have to answer now. That's one of my 4 questions, but all the rest of you have 0. So it's 4 for me, 0 for you. I need to see more engagement, okay? So maybe we can sharpen our minds now on our next speaker. So Ibu Krisendini from WWF Indonesia is with us, and she's going to present to us a little bit more on her work as energy project leader for WWF and the work they've been doing to look at upgrade of supermarkets and hotels. Thanks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like today, my name is Krisendini, and you can call me Chris, and you can also see my bio on the app, of course. I am the energy project leader of WWF Indonesia. Now, I would like to share our works. This work is actually part of a project called Climate Solution Partnership, which is a collaboration between WWF, WRI, and HSBC. And we want to promote a low carbon economy through industrial decarbonizations. As you may all know, that the commercial buildings hold a significant opportunity to energy savings in Indonesia. Building sectors, if you see that the building sectors are responsible for 26% of global emissions in 2022. And if you see in this case, it's also true for Indonesia. And we could see also in Indonesia, there will be a quite significant increase for energy consumption from the building sector. And for our works, we are focusing more on commercial buildings. And for the commercial buildings, we are trying to focus more on this. For the case study, we focus more on the two subsectors, which is supermarket and hotels. And as we are in tropical countries, we know that for supermarkets and hotels, the cooling systems are the most energy consumption. And this is for the supermarket, of course, we want to make sure the products that's sold there is in a good condition. That's why refrigerators and freezers are important. And for hotel sectors, the air conditioning is the most use of the energy. And these cooling systems has to be operated 24/7, non-stop. This leads to high energy consumption. Yeah, this is to show that there are energy savings potentials. This is based off a study conducted by an institutions in Indonesia that show that the energy saving potentials has existed both for the existing buildings as well as the new buildings, and they are quite significant. This is the case in the 5 cities in Indonesia. Yeah, looking more with our case studies, why we are focusing on supermarkets and hotels, because in Indonesia, at the moment, there are more than 1,000 supermarkets and more than 4,000 hotels across Indonesia. And in Indonesia, we rely heavily on tourism. Yeah, the companies that we are partnering with our case study is a supermarket chain which is the largest supermarket chains in Indonesia, and also a hotel management with chains more than 100 portfolio under the management. And we developed for them a tailored guidelines for both companies. It based on the energy audit that we conducted with sampling from the most representative units for each companies. We make sure that it could be replicated throughout their supply, their chain. Okay, and what our findings are, the both companies, they're already doing some energy efficiency, but because they are doing it without a prior reliable energy audit, so high energy equipment and facilities are overlooked. Based on our an energy audit that we conducted there are several recommendations that we provided for them. And there are different recommendations, but we can see that there are similarities. The shared insight are actually the standardized building codes within chains are needed, and also the structured energy management system. Both are important for both of the companies. Because why the standardized building codes are important? Because these two companies has a high expansion rate. Their business expansion is quite high. And also for both companies, we see that the payback period for most measures is actually expected to be short and medium term. So basically, the key takeaways that we could find from this case study is that the homogeneity of operations presents a wider opportunity. Of course, it should be tailored based on its circumstances. And of course, also for the business, profit is the bottom line. Everything is to be profitable. So we should frame the energy audit as an assessment for unlocking wider opportunity. This could get buy-in from the management as well as the BOD of these companies. And also the understanding building structure is also important, because we have to understand who make the decision making, who are the decision making for its companies, and and this is important to invest, to make them invest on energy efficiency measures. And actually, basically, if these both companies implement our recommendation, it could actually significantly reduce their carbon footprint and, of course, the energy bills. And this one is to complement our works from the energy team in WWF Indonesia. Our colleagues also from the sustainable finance teams also doing studies in collaborations with climate bonds initiatives, and to see the potential for financing the energy efficiencies for companies, for light industry and commercial sectors. And we found that the ESCOs, or energy savings companies, can actually help address barriers faced by companies, because it could convert the CapEx to OpEx. And the ESCO also provides performance savings guarantees for their solutions. And because the payment terms are often tied to energy savings during this period. Yeah, our findings as well based on this study is that there's also some challenges that faced by this ESCO, is because ESCO needs to conduct a more comprehensive and so costly energy audit to make sure they have the savings that they needed to get their profits. And also, we found out that banks often reluctant to finance energy efficiency projects due to the reliability of projected savings, and also lack of confidence of banks in the financial capacity of ESCOs. So we found that not many Indonesian banks offer facilities to support ESCO-driven initiative yet so far, and our studies highlight the needs for blended financing approaches supported by enabling mechanism. Yeah, looking at the existing regulatory framework in Indonesia, there are basically two main regulations related to energy conservations in commercial buildings. The first one would be the Regulation Ministry of Public Works and Housings, number 2021 in 2021, on performance assessment of green buildings. And this regulation provides technical standards for green buildings with energy efficiency as one of the criteria. But whether the building is required to meet these standards depends on the functions of this building and the total flow area. And the regulation actually expected for this the building management to have a performance tracking for energy, but no mandatory reporting to the national ministry. The other regulation will be the government regulations, which is this initiated by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Government Regulations number 33, 2023, on energy conservations. So these regulations mandated that energy users in the building sector who consumes energy equal or more to 500 TOA per year are required to implement energy conservation activities through energy management and report it annually to the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. So we found the gaps in these regulations, that there is the need to develop sectoral guidelines, and there is also an opportunity to mainstream energy efficiency into commercial buildings regulations, need for more incentives for building managers, capacity building particularly for the both the building developers as well as building managers, and also the government officials, particularly the local government, who will be to monitor the energy performance in in buildings in their regions. And also there are no national standards available, particularly for these commercial sectors, energy efficiency in buildings. Also that we found that the business expansions in both case study highlight the strong potential for standard building codes that should be combined and combined with energy management system to curb future energy demand growth. There should be a more interoperability between these both regulations that would gain a more significant energy efficiency in the future. And the last one, that we should highlight commercial buildings with large footprints as a strategic priority to encourage business to do the audit, energy audit, to plan and of course to invest on the energy efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris and Dini, for your presentation and explaining a bit of the work that you've been doing and the lessons that you've learned in Indonesia. I'm pleased to see a series of questions coming in from you all, and I wanted to actually ask you a follow-up, but I couldn't seem to get this microphone going. But anyway, that's fine. There was a question about what types of difficulties are you facing for energy savings in supermarket? That's pretty general. I wanted to mention, because you did actually cover some of the financing issues, and you mentioned the possibility of using ESCO models and so on, noting that on Thursday there'll be session 3.4 specifically about that question to look at the financing of energy efficiency. But you mentioned policy and the sorts of policy that's required. You talked a little bit about the sorts of things that need to happen at the local level. So my question was going to be, if you could pick one thing that's needed to move things forward and see more take up, what would that one thing be? But maybe we can save that for the panel, because I don't seem to be able to... Oh, it does work. Would you like to quickly respond to that just before we move on to the next presentation? What would be the one thing that you'd like to see happen to create that uptake that you're looking for in the program?
I think I would choose to pick the policy because I think there's an urgent need for the integration of policies from the building sectors and from the energy sectors. Yeah, that would be.
Okay, yeah, and it's quite right that everywhere that energy efficiency has flourished, it's been underpinned by foundational policy. That's something that we've seen in pretty much all markets around the world, where we've seen finance flourish, where we've seen uptake and awareness flourish. Great. Okay, let's move on to our next presentation, which is from Rishikesh Mishra. He's from WRI India, and he's going to share his experiences in energy efficient buildings with us. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rishikesh Mishra from WRI India. I work with the energy team at WRI. Basically, WRI is an independent research organization. And the work that we do revolves around three interconnected goals, I'll say. That's people, nature, and climate. Today, I'll be sharing some experiences from our work from northeastern part of India. And as you can see, so the work says optimized energy infrastructure in existing healthcare building through energy audit, energy efficiency, and renewable energy integration. Yeah. So why does this matters? While we are talking about health, we understand that many healthcare centers, especially in rural and remote parts of the region, struggles with unreliable electricity and high diesel cost, which is basically due to the energy that these equipments, infrastructure is consuming. And that affects overall healthcare services that these facilities are providing in the remotest of part, and it obviously affect the critical services that they are providing. And our objective is to understand ways to improve this energy infrastructure in remote and peri-urban healthcare facility, though it can be scaled for urban areas also. And the case study will be from 2 states, Assam and Meghalaya. Yes. So coming to the core of why looking at health while other sectors are there, Indian healthcare sector consumed around 9.7 terawatt of energy, electricity in 2019-20, which is about 9% of the total commercial electricity consumption in India. So there is a huge scope on which we can work. And globally, if you see, not only about India, but globally, if you see, it's healthcare accounts for around 4.4% of net GHG emissions. So very large scope for this sector. I've already mentioned about why reliability is important, but if you see, it's the basic foundation of healthcare. Yet many rural and peri-urban facilities still rely on inefficient, and they are mostly prone to outages, which affect their overall working of their facility. So I'll say that energy optimization is crucial for both climate and health goals. And next, sharing our approach to it. Like there are many approaches to it, but what and WR India, what we did. So basically, we saw that ways to improve energy infrastructure and to measure outcomes. These are the things that can be done. So basically, we followed two-phased energy audit method, which included in between and after audit some part interventions also. So first, we did the baseline energy audit, where we try to understand, collect data. Second, between the next part of audit was whatever data that we get, whatever ideas that we got, was integrating energy efficiency and renewable energy through the learnings from audit process. And finally, when the interventions were made, looking at the phase 2 of post-installation energy audits, where we try to measure similar to what we have done initially to see the changes. And finally, pre-post intervention analysis to compare what was previously, what went well good, what didn't went good, and to compare both the things to come up with the result. Interestingly, it was a 1-year project. We started in April and completed in March. I'll be sharing the results from that project also. And we literally mapped out all the facility, as you can see here. The 2 states are mapped out. We collected many of the data. 4 important data is being shown here. It's basically to understand the built-up area. I'll deep dive into it in the next few slides, why built-up area is important, because it will help us to understand the energy intensity of the facility. And try to understand what is the connected load, what is the energy requirement for them. Third was, do they have power backups? The one in the blues you see are mostly affected with power cuts, ranging from 8 to 18, 20, or up to 2-3 days of power cut. The green one, in the other state, the electricity availability is good, but yeah, their energy bills were high. They were also using DZ sets. Out of all the places, only in the green one, they were using DZ set. The rest of the places didn't had any source of power supply. You can see 150 watt panel, which is just this size of panel, which can't run a healthcare facility, which want to run ILR, autoclaves and all. So when we mapped out, we tried to understand, we did the energy audit, what came out as the finding. You can see the graph shows the consumption per year for each type of facility. The 4 smaller ones are basically healthcare centers, which were marked in blue, and the larger one is the hospital. So the baseline showed that there are variation in energy consumption across all healthcare facilities, and it changed from 4.2 to 12.1 kilowatt hour per meter square per year. That's why the meter was important, because that will tell us how much the facilities are consuming, and we can compare between different. Inefficiencies were seen in lighting, cooling, and other loads. There were also need of additional medical equipments in the smaller healthcare facilities because they didn't have fund, they didn't have money to buy equipments also. So we found out everything, then we planned the intervention, which took around 3-4 months. We did these upgrades that you see on the screen for all the 5 healthcare facility. We started with LED retrofits. You can see the numbers over here. We looked into cooling demand, which was basically BLDC fan. We also looked into AC for the large hospital that we talked about. Interestingly, BLDC that you see at one of the healthcare facility in Meghalaya, previously there was no fan used in the village because there was not much of effect. But now with climate change, they're facing this issue. There was a heat issue. And we have seen the uses of energy efficiency. First fan, that to a BLDC fan, which consumes 1/3 of the energy of a general fan. So these were a few of the changes. We added medical equipments, we added solar PV plants, we included behavioral changes into them, try to make them understand how to use the appliances, how to use the energy, and also we used meters and RMS to look into monitoring them. So once we installed the second phase of audit was done. On the right, you see is one of the medical equipment that was added. It's an autoclave. The facility didn't have money and energy to run this, but now with solar and all, they're able to run this. And previously, the load of the facility was around 1 kilowatt, but this autoclave itself is 1.2 kilowatt. So similar additions were there. And if you see in the graph, it's very clear that the baseline energy consumption that you see in blue and the end-line energy consumption that you can see in the green. So for the smaller healthcare facilities, it increased, but if you see for the hospital where no medical equipments were added, only energy efficient retrofittings were done, it decreased to half of it. So their energy consumption will decrease effectively half of it. Just to talk about hospital why, because it shows the larger picture, what can be achieved through energy efficiency and existing infrastructure. So these are the things. If you see, that was a 50-bedded charitable healthcare hospital consuming around 9,000 kilowatt of energy per year. We did energy retrofits. Those included LED tube lights, inclusion, fans were replaced, AC was replaced. If you see on energy efficiency and cost saving, so they will save around half of the energy per year that you can see in green on EE and cost savings. Annual energy consumption will reduce by 46.9%, which is very huge. Electricity cost saving will be around 44,000 per year. And in US dollars, it will be 532, which is around 3 to 4 months of their electricity bill. And if you talk about payback, so it's less than 3 years, the payback will be there for all the inclusions that we have done. And if you see, we talked about EPI per meter square, it will reduce to half of what it was previously. Also, just to mention, on the smaller healthcare facility, I was looking at the data for April month. They have energy consumption from solar and battery only from 85 to 100%. Few facility even achieved 100% of energy totally through the solar system design and the battery. So just last 2 points. Key takeaways, what we have seen and understood through this project is integrating energy efficiency and renewable energy approach works, and it has high impacts and very quick paybacks. There is much need to engage healthcare staffs for accurate data and buy-in essential so that they can provide you data and everything that you need. We have seen 47% reduction in energy and payback of less than 3 years. Solar power have definitely proved this thing. Few places have power cut for 3-4 days in their entire area, but these healthcares were running 24/7. People even came to charge their mobile phone at this healthcare facility. Post-intervention and audit verification is very crucial. Finally, coming to recommendation and next step. So basically, energy audit plays a very important role, and it should be part going forward for all the healthcare systems to build the resilient frameworks. Budget should be allocated for energy efficiency retrofits. It shouldn't be looked down just that what will happen with energy efficiency retrofits. There is need of global standards and pool procurement so that the prices can reduce, and also we understand what we need to buy. Also, funding should be there. Like we were discussing previously, funding is a major thing, and so multilateral climate finance to public healthcare systems should be there with blended instrument. The example that I gave is from a philanthropic fund that we were able to achieve, but there is large scope. Lastly, and the final point on recommendation next step will be scale healthcare energy efficiency globally to help meet the 2030 target of doubling energy efficiency. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Rishikesh. Great presentation on the importance of healthcare. And, you know, I think I'm looking at the questions that are coming in, and thank you for your participation on the questions. I think I want to try and help answer some of these along the way. One of the questions we have is about current patterns of energy consumption in buildings and where the biggest opportunities are. And I think you've proven through talking about healthcare that it depends on the kind of building. So, you know, what you've managed to show here as well is the leverage and the other benefits that energy efficiency can bring by saying, actually, you can employ energy efficiency, you now can create a dividend that can be used to pay for more medical equipment, provide better services. You actually can improve your productivity of what you're trying to do through using energy efficiency. And that's a really powerful message. But the question of what are the best measures, we kind of know that a lot of the energy use in buildings is going to be from indirect load, so electricity use, and in warmer countries in Asia, it's going to be cooling. Potentially it's lighting, potentially there's other aspects like water heating, and in other countries heating, which is looking at thermal use of energy on site, so fossil fuel-fired boilers. That's another area we need to focus. These are all focus areas. So we know these technologies, and also plug loads, so appliances in the building. These are all the things that we need to look at, and the answer to where are the opportunities, it's everywhere, and we have to look at all of them. And ideally, we're going to use the more cost-effective measures to integrate with the less cost-effective measures to create the kind of depth of efficiencies that we're looking for. So I hope that answers the question, whoever asked it. But let's move on in the interest of time, so we have time for more of your interaction and questions at the end of the session. So our next presentation is from our representative from Environmental Design Solutions in India, Nidhi Gupta. She's going to talk to us about the importance of building codes in locking in energy efficiency in buildings. Let's give her a round of applause.
Okay, thank you everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you ADB and ASF for having me here. So first off, I'd like to request you all to please close your eyes for a minute, for a moment. Do that. Okay, now imagine a future where buildings just don't consume energy. They predict, they respond, they adapt. They become active players in our clean energy transition. This is foreseeable future, right? Right? This is not sci-fi. Okay, you can open your eyes, right? So, yeah. So we spoke about this. Buildings account for 50% of our global electricity use. And like Mark said earlier, right, building energy codes are one of the most widely used policy instruments that shape the energy use in buildings. It's time that we start reimagining what role these codes can play, not just as policy instruments, but as catalysts, because we're looking at deep decarbonization, we're looking at climate resilience. What is the status of the codes today, right? Around 88 countries have adopted codes, either be it prescriptive or performance-based. Around 37% of them have a combination of them. More than 100 don't have codes. What should be the trajectory of these countries is something that I'd like you to question. Further, many codes focus on commercial buildings. Not many focus on residential buildings, which is most of our electricity consumption is coming from. They focus on select end uses in lighting or in space heating and cooling. And you see that, that is more or less in different types of climates. That's the kind of opportunities that exist. But not many focused on plug loads, like we said, or other dynamic loads that can account to nearly half of a building's energy use. Today's codes rarely track what happens after a building is constructed. Buildings may meet the energy efficiency benchmarks on paper by design through simulations. But once occupants move in, usage patterns, the climate conditions, the system degradations, this can cause the performance to diverse, change dramatically. So only 50 codes per se specify design compliance requirements. Few of them have verification, such as audits once an occupant moves in. Less than 10 actually are talking about energy monitoring disclosure. I don't think any one of them look at a long-term actual performance, of a building through its life cycle. So, especially for new buildings, there is little data on compliance or actual performance. Although experts also say that even there is low compliance rate as well, where we have codes. In India, we've had codes since 2007. And, yet we are struggling with, compliance. There is a disconnect between what the standard code assumption is to the real world conditions, right? So because we know 20 to 25% is of the building's energy use is not even regulated. Equipment performance over time starts degrading, right? So, and due to the way we work, we won't replace an equipment till it is obsolete. So, that again doesn't happen. Building codes, controls rarely function as to the real case. They don't work in the real world conditions. So all of this kind of undermines, what the code should achieve. Now, as we transition to decarbonized systems, we saw in the previous session also, buildings are starting to already play a dynamic role with distributed renewable energy, storage, smart meters. We spoke about AI in the previous sessions also. So buildings are a part of this smart grid. We need to think of them as grid interactive, to think as services that they provide to the utility, right? So energy codes today cannot be just design guides. Yeah, they have to become a live interface between buildings, occupants, and grid. Now, as we look at the traditional codes, they are the way we are doing them right now. They're static. They focus on design compliance. They are becoming difficult to write, to update. We took 5 years to update one code. We're working with other countries as well. It's taking sometimes 10 years to update a code. And in today's dynamic conditions, it's difficult when we are writing, if we continue the way that we are going. It's hard for even municipal staff, to understand or enforce. Especially for emerging countries, this is not even a priority, right? Because the cities are working on giving critical infrastructure like water and waste. So enforcing codes often takes a back seat. And complying with them is considered, expensive. There is an additional cost with respect to simulation studies and others. So we've come a long way in development of codes, and the focus of the codes have started taking, and buildings have gone beyond to look at just the function of energy. They're looking at air quality, they're looking at health, they're looking at grid requirements to meet the climate goals. So codes now need to drive energy efficiency and carbon reductions and support electrifications. They must enable grid flexibility, reliability. They need to promote comfort, affordability, resilience. They must be inclusive. They need to respond to diverse occupant regions and the usage patterns. So what does this framework of a future building energy code look like, right? This is something we're working on. It spans the entire building life cycle that we know, from design to long-term performance. And it considers multiple variables at play, right? We're looking at climate, we're talking about occupancy, comfort, utility requirements. So at the design stage, we need to simplify the design requirements. At least for things that are one term, right? So envelope is something you can't change, or daylighting is something that you want to integrate, window sizing. So some things need to be simplified for a local municipal person to understand. Have commissioning checks for higher end intensity end users like cooling, heating, all of them. But look at smart meter enabled or AI-based tracking for compliance, both in terms of carbon emissions, because you do want to look at clean energy integration, right? And look at grid responsiveness. So there is, what I'm asking, or what I'm trying to propose here is like a mindset shift, right, on how we look at designing and enforcing codes. We are moving away from static design intent based codes to a dynamic real time AI enabled systems that are continuously learning and adapting. The future of energy codes is not just about design. With our climate crisis in hand, we need to account for behavior patterns such as frugality, adaptation, sufficiency, the capability of us to adapt. So lastly, I'd just like to conclude that, while we have codes as, essential to guide our industry forward, but they are not the end goal. They are the starting point, and compliance ideally should be looking at real-time performance. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nidhi. I think, at the start when you asked us sort of close our eyes and imagine that we're in the future, it feels like you are from the future with all the things that you're expecting that we can do with codes. I think you raised a number of really interesting things. And in my mind, I'm just wondering, how do we create the understanding and the capacity around this? Okay, how do we create the capacity and understanding around this that countries can take it forward, and I'm quite interested in the measurement of energy efficiency. It's something that I do through the Efficiency Valuation Organization, which looks at the importance of this. And I'm reminded of a quote that I had recently about how hard this is, because energy is invisible, and energy efficiency is about reducing this thing. So in fact, we're trying to measure something, we're trying to measure the absence of something invisible, which is not so easy, right? So, I think there's you've presented a really interesting vision, and we have to think about how we can actually progress towards that vision. Plenty of questions about that. And you also mentioned something which Lavan mentioned at the start, I think, that we can come back to, which is the multiple benefits of energy efficiency. It's not just about energy, and it's not just about profits, it's about health, and it's about things like saving on infrastructure spend for power generation and a range of other measures. So a lot to talk about in the questions that are coming up. So before that, we have one more speaker. Felix Chan is from Arup in Hong Kong, and he's going to talk to us a little bit more about measurement and monitoring systems from his perspective. Thanks, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mark, for the introductions. And yes, I'm the only presenter standing between you and the cocktail section, so I'll make sure I'll be quick. So yes, I'm Felix from the Arup Hong Kong Climate and Sustainability team. So years ago, I started to look into the building efficiency and how we could improve the performance of the buildings. And by then, I tried to link up digitals and sustainability together. So I think like what I can do is to continue to the previous ladies' presentations, how we could use these beauties of digitals to make the existing buildings rejuvenize or to make it future ready by using this neuron platforms that developed by Arup in-house. So before the presentation, I actually make a poll in applications and say, do you trust the daily data that you use? And there's, I think, 4 answers, and one of them is me, so well done the other 3 people. And most of them, they say yes. So I kind of agree with you. So data is the best, and also sometimes it's the worst. It depends on how you use it and the data quality of it. If you got a good batch of data, you can actually train from raw data and the knowledge that you wish to continue. So it could be the foundations of paving your ways to the net zero journey. So this is why we introduced this data-driven approach for our upcoming works. So here is one of the examples why data could be the worst. So here is actually the chiller. It's like the HVAC systems in your buildings, and we have collected operational data of the chiller systems. And originally, it got like over 2,600 data points. And after removing all the bad data and also all the like abnormal status, there's only 180 numbers left, which is roughly 6% of the original data sets. So do you still think the data that you use daily without checking of it, is it still valid for your decision makings? I think this is one of the message that I would like to take away, you guys to take away after these presentations. So in view of that, we have kind of introduced this data qualities analysis frameworks that we came up with 9 different factors. First, put the completeness in the first place. Why it's very important is data is just data, but do think of the end goal, what you're trying to achieve. Talk about like energy reductions or carbon reductions or like IAQ, indoor air quality, of the wellness, well-being of the indoors data. So based on what you want to collect, you know what sort of meters or data you need in order for you to extract those informations that you want to take away. So first of all, think of what's the information you need. This is how you complete your data sets. So that's why I put completeness at the very beginnings. And then we got, of course, the timeless, the certainties, and also the data structures. Right now, we're talking about AI. So we have to make sure that our data is readable and usable for the computers, not just using Excel anymore, right? So we have to make sure that our data structures is also ready for the futures. So this is kind of the 9 parameters that we look into when we talk about the data qualities assessment. So welcome to take a pictures of it, and later on, if you're interested, we could talk more on these sections. So then we fall into now the AI sections. So in this neuron platform, there's like 5 main pillars that that the neuron platform could do. First of all, of course, to talk about the abnormal data detections, how we could do the data cleansings and analysis work. And then we have the HVAC systems optimizations. So about the chiller systems, the air size system, water size systems. And then not just talking about optimization, it's not like a black box. We also give out like operation strategy suggestions to the operators so they know what actions to be taken. They can also learn from it. So this is like a knowledge sharings. And then more 2 items is more like for like facility management usage. So we got the emergency response, and also we should talk about like the predictive maintenance actions and also the asset management. So this is kind of the main pillars of this neuron platforms could do. So let's start with the HVAC system plant optimizations. So I mean, like in the markets, there's a lot of products that they claim they could do the HVAC system like optimizations. Most of the time they will tell you, hey, we use the real-time data for you to do the optimization works. But in our point of view, for like operators or like engineering point of view, there's always a thing called the response time. The easiest ways to understand is when you turn on the HVAC system at your home, the AC at your home, you still need to like take around like 15, 30 minutes to reach the design, the set point. So this is what we call the response time. So there's never a good way to use the real-time data to chase your design conditions, right? So that's why we have introduced this cooling predictions or like the demand forecasting. So we use the operational data, we use the past data, we use the data from the observatories, we use the data from all kinds of sensors and stored it to predict what's going to happen in the coming hours. So this accuracy is within 5%, the predictions and also the real-time conditions. So this is how we come up with a more feasible solutions to the systems, the major systems, to run at the optimums like a COP or the performance efficiency. We could also apply the same ideas to the ASI system as well. So you can see here how we collect the historical data. Even we have installed IAQ sensors, also the people counting CCTV, all those informations we put all together and form this neuron network forecastings and to predict what's the coming cooling load will be in each of the areas and also the CO2 forecastings. So we could fine tune the fan speed, the fresh air intake, or the HU schedules, also to maximize the efficiency of those equipments. And of course, we talk about the BIM integrations. So it's more like a visualization tools, but we put all the real-time status in there, the status, the operational informations, and even we got the predictive maintenance approach, which we keep on monitoring the performance of the equipments. If the equipment start to degrade, like the COP start dropping, then we know what kind of action we should do in order to make it back to the default conditions. So this is kind of the illustrations of those BIM integrations into it. So here is kind of the landscape of this neuron platform. So I've talked about the BIM integrations, the asset management, talk about the predictive maintenance. We also got the health monitoring and control, which is one of the modules that I've developed right at the beginning stage of these COVID sessions, which I try to correlate the indoor pollutants, common indoor pollutants, and also the pathogens, which is the things that make you sick. So we have make a correlation into it and try to make like a KPIs, so people will be easy to understand what kind of indoor condition that you are facing right now during the COVID time, which is quite useful. And then we've got all kinds of like heat mapping, energy measurements, and et cetera, and et cetera. So this is kind of the functions that we have there in this neuron platform. To end with, I would like to share with you case studies that we did it here in Hong Kong, which is more core elements. And in there, we have implemented retro commissioning process and also implementing this neuron platform there for like ongoing monitorings and optimizations. And we are just by fine-tuning the chiller control, we are be able to save over 10% of the operational energies of their buildings, just by fine-tuning the chiller control, not to mention other like retrofitting works. And we have also, of course, installed like a little bit of sensors just to improve the data collections. And one message I want to bring out from this project is the overall payback periods is less than 1 year. So you can tell it's very efficient. It's a very efficient way or cost-effective ways to reduce your building energies and also to achieve your building resilience, which is reducing the energies and also improving the building values. So I think this is the end of our presentation. 3 points to take away. 1, the data qualities. 2, to make sure you understand what you want, what's your end goal, what you're trying to achieve. And lastly, don't be hesitate to work on retro commissionings and also implementing those digital platforms to do like on-grid monitoring systems. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Felix. And I was wondering when AI was going to find its way in our presentation, right? Because it's in all the presentations now. But very interesting and well summarized, Felix. Interesting topics to discuss now for our panel discussion. I'm going to invite all of our panelists now back to the stage so we can start to think about what we want to ask them. And wow, I'm writing notes here, sort of looking at what we've discussed. Maybe while you're making your way up, panelists, I can just introduce the Q&A session that we'll have now. But we've talked about some interesting case studies of retrofitting in different building types and across hotels and supermarkets. We haven't talked about offices, we haven't talked about residential or industrial, but we've talked about healthcare and we've talked about supermarkets and other things, different buildings. We've talked a little bit about finance and the importance of things like data, information. We mentioned AI as part of that. The idea that we do need to have post-installation measurement and verification, building management. We've talked about incentives a little bit, maybe about regulations, building codes, but broadly policy. We've also talked about the benefits from doing this and the multiple benefits that there may be. So a lot of material there that we can cover. We have some questions from all of you in the audience, and I'm going to encourage you to take another look at those questions and use the little like button to upvote those, because I want to make sure we answer the questions that you want to know the answers to. Of course, you can have the chance to also ask your live questions now if there's something you haven't thought of yet, and we'll try and keep this session as interactive as possible. I do want to remind you that I've been asked by the organisers to remind you that there is also cocktails after this in the staff hub outside. When you go out, turn right and then to the left down there. I don't think any of you forgot that, but I'm just reminding you anyway, as I was asked to do. So I'll start quickly, just if there's anyone who has a burning question that they don't, maybe they're not tech savvy, they don't like to use the app, so they can ask right now to kick us off. Alex Ablaza down the front, I'm going to say the godfather of energy efficiency in the Philippines, so he's probably going to ask you a difficult question. Watch out.
Well, thank you, Alex Blaza. I wear the hat of the Asia Pacific ESCO Industry Alliance. This is a question for Chris and Lavan. Policy. I'm very happy that Indonesia, the government regulation number 33, has brought down the consumption threshold from the previous 6,000 tons of oil equivalent, and you mentioned 500 tons of oil equivalent. But that's still a big figure, right? In Singapore, I don't know how much it has been from 54 terajoules. It's down to what now in Singapore for buildings? Anyway, for existing building stock, how much in Indonesia, how much of those hospitals, hotels and supermarkets were above and how much were below the 500 tons of oil equivalent? And maybe a similar question for Singapore. If you had that threshold, are you capturing much of the shopping malls and light manufacturing within that threshold? I'm not sure if it's 54 terajoules today. So just this quick question: what is the consumption threshold where building energy use is regulated?
Sorry. Sorry, technology. Yeah, thank you for the questions. Yeah, we understand that this is very important, the threshold for mandatory energy management system. But unfortunately, I don't have that question, that answer yet. But how many actually hotels? But in Indonesia, there are a lot of small hotels, which I think would fall below that thresholds. And I agree that it needs these potentials of the small hotels, which doesn't have like, perhaps not even one-star hotels. This is a lot of there's also like community-based rooms that serve for tourists as well. These opportunities should not be ignored. So I think, although it should not be mandatory for them, because I think it's going to be quite challenging for them. But I think that the government, particularly the local government, should also encourage these small hotels to do their energy efficiency measure through the building management as well. So I think we should also have the efforts to capacitate these small hotels as well as the local government to do some energy efficiency measures as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Levan, you want to also comment?
Sorry, Alex, I don't think I have a number for you. But I think it's actually just pure admin efficiency, right? It's very difficult to get the reporting from everyone, so you target the large folks, and hopefully that takes you across the line. But actually, I thought the deeper point here was that now we see even people who don't have to report, even people who may fall below the thresholds, they want to do this. Right, they want to do this, and the reason they want to do this is because they have been able to see how, if I can meet certain, like I talk about a carrot and stick approach, right? If I can meet some of your requirements, I'm going to be able to attract a different profile of tenants, and that is so interesting now when you look at buildings, right? Commercial buildings or even office space, right? If you want to attract the Amazons and the Facebooks of the world, you got to meet certain standards, and if you don't, then they're just going to shop around to look for someone else. So I think we have to give it some time, but we really feel there's this change that's happening. So even people who fall below the thresholds, I think there's a way to reach out to them through carrots and sticks approach. But I think over time, you'll find more and more people just have to do it because this is the demand now.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to apologize to my panel because my microphone works really well and none of the others do. But I promise to stay a little bit more quiet. I think this is an interesting discussion about policy and the role of policy. And Chris, you mentioned that if you wanted to see one thing change, it would be more supportive policy. And Alex's question about how effective is this policy? So there's policy, there's the enforcement of policy, and there's also the reaction to policy. And we're talking about the stick and so regulation and building codes also coming into that. And you mentioned that there's the flip side of that, the carrot, which is obviously incentives. And I'm reminded of a funny thing somebody said to me once, which is said, of course there's always carrots and sticks, but you can also beat people with a carrot. Anyway, that's another one. But there's a couple of points here in the questions about incentives. So I want to talk about that as well. We're talking about policy and the floor, if you like, the regulatory policy that supports minimum level of action, if you like, but also incentives. So a couple of questions about this, in our experience, in the experience of the panel, what incentives are attractive for corporates, hotels, real estate companies to pursue this? There's also a question about the benefits that building owners can get from the government by taking part in a country's green building goals. I'm reading that as like policy incentives. So does anybody want to tackle that in terms of, I guess, what motivates people to act on this? Whether if it's not regulatory compliance, but thinking about how they can go ahead and what sort of incentives would be effective to think about uptake in this area. Does anyone want to tackle that? Maybe Rishikesh, from your experience working with healthcare organisations and healthcare facilities, what motivates people for energy efficiency?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Very interesting. So what more can be looked into? I'll share one of the example, not from our work, but overall experience from India. Government started to look into lighting to reduce the energy demand of the country at large. Millions and millions of units. India as a country wanted to save. While we're using these old incandescent lights, which consumes around 100 watt and all, there was subsidy given to people to change it to 10-watt bulbs. So see, subsidy was there, but to upscale it, it was few years back, most probably 6-7 years back when it started. People changed from using 100 watt to 10 watt through that subsidy. Now our experience on ground in the facilities, we mentioned about 110 lights only. In the hospital itself, Sevanivas will have the hospital, the larger hospital that I mentioned, will have more than 150 lights. It's very interesting how subsidy being provided at that time made people shift their mind also and to integrate all this. We wanted to spend money on buying these lights and fans, but this time we could spend only half of the money on buying LED lights, which was also a good thing. So subsidies is something that can motivate people and also to let them know that in larger run, it will make them save money also because subsidy help them to scale this up. But if you look at the energy consumption, so in the same amount of price that I was paying, I could run these new LED lights 10 numbers instead of one light. So I think financially, and that's why many of us talked about behavioral change also. These things combined together will definitely bring support to people and motivate them.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned, what we sometimes call the efficiency dividend, which people take as savings, but often they say, oh, well, now I can do more than I could before because I have actually created these savings. In a sense, that's what people care about more than the energy savings, is that they're now more liberated to be able to pursue all of the other values that they have. So does anyone else want to comment on this question about incentives? What motivates building owners to really take action on this, and what sort of incentive policies have been effective?
I think we also need to be, sorry, this may not be a popular thing to say, we need to be quite careful about incentives, right? They kind of promote the wrong behavior. Someone who's already going to do it will just take it for the incentive. And I'm quite skeptical. Well, Singapore uses a lot of incentives, as you can imagine. I'm quite skeptical on efficiency, on incentives. Not to say that we shouldn't have it. We should have it, but I mean, energy efficiency, I think a consistent theme across all the presentations was that this pays for itself. So it pays for itself. So you don't need an incentive, right? So it's kind of hard. And some of my panelists talked about blended finance. I think there is a role for some amount of blended finance, but I think it's just, we all know it pays for itself. So I think the reasons why these don't happen are much, much deeper. And it's not possible in this 1.5 hours, but our sense is that there's just a lot of resistance, right? Again, not a popular thing to say, the incentive frameworks for how budgets are set aside for maintenance, etc. It's all tied to remunerations and how much gets set aside. So the incentive structure is all misaligned in this sector. So you need to really take things apart before you start getting into the real reasons, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like we still have plenty of work to do yet before we solve some of these questions. I want to ask the audience again. There was a question from the audience. Can you please come up to the microphone and let us know who you are and ask your question to the panel? Thanks.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. And first of all, thank you so much and for a very interesting presentation. It wasn't really informative. As we see and here we're in the different direction in the energy efficiency field, energy management system and building code, and also in the technology side and so on. But my question is about the challenges, because it's very important and the first to identify and what is the challenges in this field. For instance, in my country, I'm from Georgia, I'm head of energy efficiency and renewable energy policy department in Georgia, and the main challenge is lack of low electricity price first. Second, it's very important and challenging point is and lack of information, and third is and the cashback and the payback period and the forces. That's why and we have very good results in the legal framework, because and we approved energy efficiency law, energy efficiency and eco design and labeling and so on. We introduce and these sectoral measures in the building issues. Why is the building and why is important? Because as you are aware, in consumption is so high in the building issues, including in public and households and commercial buildings. It is around 45% in my country. Mostly it is for hot and heating system, it's so high and the consumption. But the question is in how to start, because of course and already started an implementation energy efficiency in the public building, but it's not enough, because as I mentioned, we have many important and the challenges in this field. My question is, of course, in your presentation, it was a really informative, but I'm so sorry, but did not see some information about challenges. For example, for Indonesia. My question is, what is your and the key challenge in the building issues in the energy efficiency field? If it, how decide, how to start? Probably you have some, I'm not sure, but and probably this is some first, of course, and first step is very difficult and for the transition period, but our and the country's aim is to achieve very ambitious targets, which is for 2030. I will stop here. It's
Thank you, and your question's really welcome. And I think you could be one of our panelists to tell us more about what's happening in Georgia. It's really interesting, and I hope you get a chance to share your experiences with a lot of people here in ASEF. But it's a really good question. Where do we start? A fundamental question, and I think maybe I will direct this one maybe to you, Nidhi, because as I said, wow, like you're coming from the future, everything's working. We have advanced building codes. We have a system in place where we can measure things and measure compliance against this performance, and then obviously there's going to be a way to fix that performance if it's not up to scratch. So, you know, my immediate thought there was for a lot of the countries among ADB's developing member countries, the readiness is not there. The capacity within ministries, the capacity of industry to understand the benefits and be able to, you know, take on board and embrace this idea, yes, we should become more energy efficient, yes, we should become zero carbon buildings, you know, that's a real difficulty. That's a real blocking point. So how do we get started on, for example, your prescription for really more advanced energy codes for buildings? Where do we start?
Does this work? I'm going to start. No. So Mark's, hello, is this working? Yes. Okay, so I would like to differ, you know. I mean, the enabling environment is there, the signals are there. I mean, obviously each country has its own you know, status of where they are right now in development of codes, as well as in you know, in terms of tracking energy efficiency. Some don't even have their building data repository or benchmarking of where the existing building energy use lie. Most of the countries don't have that. We are doing that now in India. But I think the enabling conditions for a you know, dynamic regime exists. Like, you know, you are looking at smart metering rollout. We are looking at better access to getting building energy information. We spoke about, you know, AI tools for designing. So technically, specifically, there is not a challenge. What I see as a challenge is more institutional, on, you know, how is enforcing, what parameter of enforcement and what compliance, who's checking what. So in terms of, you know, if I'm looking at design compliance, building approval departments or municipal corporations, in terms of looking at building design, they are capable to do that. But when you're looking at EPIs or you're looking at energy performance, they don't have the skill set to do that. And if in the end, I want to see a net zero energy building, or I want to see a building that is integrated, it's actually on the performance side. Do we need to get utilities in that challenge, in this discussion? You know, so how we are enforcing codes and where the responsibility lies needs a shift. That is what I'm trying to say. So there is technology, technically, I feel is not a problem. But as a first step, I would say that, you know, just with looking at how the utility planning or the utility infrastructure is advancing, we need to have that dialogue. We are having a discussion on buildings here. We have another session on utilities, which is different. We aren't even integrating this right now. So that's somewhere where I think, you know, if you're looking at that, and with utilities advancing in that direction, we also need to step up.
Right, well, there's a little hopeful message for us that there's actually a lot of capacity out there if we can bring it together. And I think one thing that's interesting as well about energy efficiency, it relates to buildings, but it relates to all of energy efficiency, is this energy efficiency industry doesn't really exist. It's a conglomeration of financiers and suppliers, technology vendors, maybe specialist advisors like ESCOs, you know, and others who are all sort of coming together around this issue. But what you're saying is that that ecosystem building is needed so that you can start to really push ahead and understand and maybe help to progress these kinds of challenging issues. I want to bring Felix back into this, and we're already running out of time. I can see some questions in the audience, but Felix, just on the question of automation of building management and so on. I mean, I have a question for you as well about, you mentioned that this is a very sort of attractive investment. I guess I'm interested, my question a little bit, where are the incremental savings over sort of advanced BMS by using machine learning? You know, I guess I'm just trying to see what it is that AI can see that building managers can't see. And also, how do you get people convinced that they should be managing their building, they should be doing retro commissioning, they should be going back to see if their building is actually working? How do they get convinced to do that in the first place? Back to the question of where do we start in getting people engaged with this?
Yeah, so thank you for your question. So I think I'll try to use the case in Hong Kong. So the facility managers in Hong Kong usually run the buildings based on experience or based on personal feelings. Oh, I feel cold, so let's tune the HVAC system that way. I feel hot, so let's do it that way. But right now, like in this digital era, I think we could embrace the beauty of using digital like sensors or IoT meters, right? There's tons of operational data generated from the buildings and from the sensors daily. So the beauty of AI is they could help us to generate some new insights that people don't never like look into that before. For example, one of the examples from the Elements project is usually when we turn on the chiller system, right? We turn on one chillers and we switch on one the cooling towers. This is the usual approach. But then one day the system told me that, hey, you should try to turn on two cooling towers. But in the human point of view, I'll say, okay, why we turn on two fans? So it's like wasting the fan powers, right? So we usually don't do that. But after the simulations, they told me that if we turn on two fan systems, and it could be able to reduce the condensing water temperatures of the chillers. And from that, the chiller could save more than using the extra fan powers. So this is kind of the information that, as a human being, we won't be able to know or won't be able to guess without any data. So this is one of the reasons why we should try to introduce these AI platforms to do not like a monitoring system. Like it's more than that. It's more like a real-time retro commissioning platforms to keep like every minute or every seconds you're actually doing like energy audits, like retro commissionings. So this is why we should push on that as well. This is my point of view.
Okay, great. That's really interesting and I think helpful for all of us thinking about this new technology. We're almost out of time and I really do not want to be the guy who stops you from finishing the day, but I'll take one more question from the floor. You've been waiting patiently there. Thanks. Please go ahead and let us know where you're from and your question.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kiran Gupta from Tata Power. So Tata Power is the only integrated utility with both generation, transmission, distribution, renewables, EV, home automation. So coming back to your point, Nidhi, that utilities need to come forward. So I would like to just put up that we as a utility, we take up many programs with our customers across segments, and we run the ESCO programs and all. So we drive under our demand side management programs. We take up many initiatives and drive this concept of energy efficiency. But I would just like to share that maybe we need to also understand, while there is an environmental solutions organization from where you work or many of such organizations, but utility is the last mile connect to the consumer. So I think while we devise any solutions or policies, we need to understand the utility framework, how we work. So we work under the regulations. So I think since you touched upon that, I thought it is pertinent to share this thought. So unless we connect, I mean, these agencies, the environmental designs and all, you connect with the utility and the regulator, understand that framework, I think it would be difficult to kind of deploy these solutions. And secondly, I think I heard some time back, so there was a discussion going on the subsidy. So I understand, because I handle around 2.5 million customer base of one part of the Delhi. So I understand that subsidy is something which is not sustainable. But I think for these kind of topics which we are discussing now, energy efficiency in buildings, or maybe sustainability, clean energy, initially the mindset of the consumer is such that till the consumer finds some incentive, they just don't get into the things, the flow of the things, and they just don't want to listen about it. So I think for the initial timings, the subsidy can be a driving factor, and then later on we can leave it, because we are running some BDR programs also, behavioral demand response programs also. So that's what I just wanted to convey my thoughts on the second point. And on the first point, maybe if you can connect with the utilities through the framework in which they operate, we can definitely drive this. And I compliments for choosing this topic, because we from utilities, we drive it on our own, but we don't find it anywhere, or we, if I may use the word, that we don't find anyone thinking about it, kind of a thing. So I was really happy to look at the topic. Thanks.
All right, great. Well, we are actually at time, and I'm really pleased with your just interest and participation in the topic. I feel like we're only just getting started. We haven't talked really anything about financing, which is a huge issue. I mean, I'll come all the way back to Levan's presentation at the start, saying there's a gap here, And he's mentioning a few things like small ticket sizes, which makes it difficult for financiers to grapple with energy efficiency as an upgrade, as an infrastructure, which I'm going to remember. Thanks. We haven't spent a long time talking about all the aspects of policy. We talked a little about it, and we talked about regulations and incentives, but there's a lot more that we can look forward to doing there. We can look more at situating buildings within the overall push here. We didn't talk about grid interactivity of buildings. That's where we're looking at the ability, for example, to interact with electric vehicles and to be able to use electric vehicles as batteries. I've got half a dozen questions that we didn't answer in the app either, and I have about 30 questions I was going to ask you in case these guys didn't participate enough. So we're out of time, but there's much more to talk about. So please take the moment that you're here at ASEF, the 20th ASEF, and you've come to learn from some of the experts that we've assembled here. So take the time to ask them about your questions after the presentation, learn what you came here for, and of course, let's take it to the cocktails and continue the conversation all together. So thanks a lot for your participation and look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Please thank all the